I had the delightful experience last week of finally saying the right thing at the right moment. And I just wanted to tell you how sweet and wonderful such a thing is, because I'm sure, like you, or like myself, you also have struggled with trying to find the right words when you need them and to speak up at the right moment. And Proverbs 25:11 says that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in the setting of silver. And it's a sweet and fine thing. So here's what happened. I'm in Mexico City, and part of our time in Mexico was to meet with key leaders, people who have influence over many other leaders. And in this case, we were sitting down with a man who actually has influence over leaders throughout all of the Latin American countries. And so this was probably among the most significant events in our recent travels to Mexico, and training our 4 questions that answer the crisis of abortion with the gospel of life. So it's a very important meeting. And as typically happens, leaders are very resistant to talk about abortion. They don't preach about it. They don't teach about it. They see it through a political lens. They're concerned about responses from their church, or in many cases, abortion is still very personal to them given their own life story. And they just don't know how to find the strength and the courage to talk about it. And therefore, they're reluctant to have us come in and talk about it as well with any kind of network of churches. So it's very typical for us to go into a meeting with key leaders and to be overwhelmed with politeness, which is not exactly what you're after, and kind of a spirit of caution and resistance, at the same time never wanting to really reveal what their concerns are. So you can feel it in the room. And then when we were at this meeting last week, my coworker Jeannie Pernia was there, and she was talking about abortion in Cuba and throughout Latin America, and giving her own testimony about how she once ran an abortion business, and then God used her to open a pregnancy center in her old abortion business. And of course, that the conversion of the building becomes a metaphor for the real transformation that God has done in her heart. It's a very powerful story. And it does lower resistance and defenses and start to open up the heart. But still, in this case, you could just see there was a distractedness in the room. We also had a pastor from Cuba. And any Latin America leader knows the problems that the church faces in Cuba. And yet this pastor, Pastor Sandy, who now works with Passion Life in Cuba, was testifying to how churches across the island were breaking their silence and were beginning to understand abortion as a biblical issue in which the Bible has a lot to say about the shedding of innocent blood. And really describing how excited the church was as they began to rescue mothers and couples from abortion. So again, very positive words, but again, a lot of caution and resistance. And I sat there and I kept saying, wait. And part of it is because they're all speaking Spanish. So you've got the natural resistance of the topic, and then you've got the challenge of going from one language to another. And so I just kept waiting, and I had something I wanted to share, but I wasn't sure if I should say it. I just said, John, wait, just wait. Pray, ask for discernment, ask for wisdom. I just kept sitting there while everybody else was talking and interacting. And finally, there was a go moment, and I just said, this is where I'm going for it. And I spoke up, and everything in the room changed as a result of it. His interest level increased. Right before I spoke, another coworker came into the room, and his attitude and his demeanor and his level of interest was much higher. And it also changed the dynamics in that meeting. And the level of interest, that all of a sudden they began to ask more questions. They began to look for opportunities where we might help them train more leaders in how to respond well to abortion and lead the church of our generation to respond to the shedding of innocent blood in a way that saves the innocent and brings good news to the guilty. This is our passion at Passion Life. Everything changed. And after the meeting, several of my coworkers said, "John, you changed everything when you said what you said." And of course, I was a little delighted and humbled because so many times you're always struggling. I wish I would have said this. I could have said this. I ought to have said that. And we can't find the right words in the moment, maybe because of nerves or pressure or fear, who knows what. But I did have an experience where I got to say the right thing at the right moment. Apples of gold in the setting of silver. Apples of gold, I think, probably refers to, again, saying the right thing in the setting of silver in the right context. And the Bible testifies that a word fitly spoken, well-timed, well-aimed, is like apples of gold in the setting of silver. I think it's worth praying about, discerning, asking for wisdom, finding your courage, and speaking up when it's necessary. I got a little taste of that last week in Mexico, and I think it's going to lead to some really good things, and I just wanted to share it with you today. 1,000 blessings.